Continuous improvement is awesome, but, and of course you knew there was going to be a but, because it's me, and also because continuous improvement doesn't work for a lot of people. I mean, how many times have you had the recurring retro where the same problem comes up retro after retro, maybe spread every couple of months, but just keeps coming up? Or how many times as a manager working with a team have you felt yourself struggling between the choice to let the team fix what they want, even though it doesn't really matter, or guiding them and giving them some direction, but in that way disempowering the team, and continually feeling like you have to bring back your opinions and hold back so that they can have power, even when it leads to wrong choices and ineffectiveness? Or how many times as a team have you had your hard-fought changes get overturned by the next reorg, or simply the next management flavor of the month? What we need is a way to structure continuous improvement, something that's resilient and flexible and awesome. We need culture as a process. Right? So let's look at some of the structures that exist today, because it's not like this is the first time we're going to structure continuous improvement. So the most common one that's used is manager edict. The manager simply makes a choice. The problem is that that will never survive the next change in management. Right? It's not resilient to a change. So another common option is retros, and retros are great for hearing about problems, but they don't really do a good job of solving especially complex problems. When the solution is obvious and easy, you just agree to it and you move on, but even then there's a problem with implementation. Another less common one, culture as code. Culture as code is fantastic for defining how we're going to work, but it doesn't do a good job of bringing in concerns from outside the team, and it often results in a boundary of those inside the team versus those outside the team, and who's better able to help the team improve. It also isn't really good at discovering the non-obvious solutions. Well, okay, and then there's, for making the change itself, the most common structure is to have an enforcer, or a nagger, as it often turns out to be. But really, that doesn't make change easy. And how many times have you found that the nagger or enforcer just continuously has to push at the change until eventually they give up or forget? All right, we need some new structures. So let's look at our requirements for that. Now, we want our system to be easy, effective, and flexible. Right? We want it to be able to change and adapt as we go. So for that, we need a set of practices, not a strategic roadmap. Practices over a series of steps. To get there, I've defined one principle, 4 practices, and 3 structures that will deliver on that core requirement. So let's start with the principle. All right, so the principle is we need equal power to change. Right? The manager needs to be able to bring in their opinions without overwhelming the team. The team needs to be able to make a choice and have it stick no matter who's in what position of authority. People outside the team need to have equal power to express a problem that they're experiencing as a result of the team's behavior to those inside the team. Right? Everybody around the company needs equal power to be able to see just how healthy is the system, what's going on, where do we need to make improvements, and what would be an improvement. To implement that principle, we have 4 different practices, 4 different ways that we change our behavior. So the first is we need a practice to help us evaluate and decide. We're going to make all of our decisions on the basis of consent, driven by data. The result is, well, consent is basically action-oriented consensus. You get a lot of the benefits of consensus, but it's biased to take an action, to at least discover some information. And data, the result of driving your decisions with data is that opinions start mattering less. Opinions become just the source of insights for which we will go gather data. And that equals the playing field. When it's based on opinion, then the person with the greatest authority, whether that's from expertise or position or any other source, that authority ends up driving the decisions. As soon as it's on data, authorities may influence more of the experiments that are run, but everyone can still get some experiments are run, and whichever experiment turns out best turns out to drive their direction. The second practice is to have a clear, uniform way to describe how we work right now. And for that, we're going to use culture as code with automation as a process, at least up to the checklist level. Right? That way, every way that we work is described by whatever's checked into source control. Right? And when we want to make a change, we change whatever's checked into source control following our usual PR process. That makes it so that we always have one clear, transparent way to work. And that enables clear change. When you're working in fuzzy ways or everyone's working in different ways, you can't really run an experiment. You can't really change the way you work because it's not one thing, and anything that you try and change is sort of changing from a mushy state. All right, so this gets one clear way that we work. Practice number 3, we need a low cost to change. We need a low cost change of behavior, and we need a low cost change in artifact, like code or really anything else that's supporting our system and working with us. Right? We've already got a low cost change in artifact, stories. We just do that regularly. But we need a low cost change behavior, and for that we use learning as a process. Learning as a process makes it so that each behavior change is tiny, simple, and fast. In fact, changing to the new way is often easier than maintaining the status quo, especially with the pain points that the status quo has. Right? Once the new way is easier than the old way, then convenience drives change. And change becomes automatic. Great. Now we have the 4th practice. The 4th thing that we need is a way to explore when the pain is obvious, but the solution is not so obvious, or there are multiple competing solutions. And for that, we're going to lean on some of our prior practices by really implementing good experimentation, right? Experiment formally, right? So we're going to lean on our data, and we're going to lean on having a clear way to describe how we work. Right? The combination of both of those allows us to define clear experiments, run them, see what results we get, and make a choice on the basis of that. Now, this also requires that as we're defining those experiments, we have to define the measures. What are the measures of success? What are the invariants we're trying to maintain? And that requires that we get very, very clear on the outcome. We start having to describe the pain much more clearly and get all on the same page. And that can be, by itself, extremely valuable. Once we've got that, we can then define multiple experiments to address. We explore them in a breadth-first manner, and we can only make the choice only after we've gotten all of the data. Right? That allows us to follow multiple intuitions and then pick whichever one turned out best. So bringing these practices into play requires 3 important structures. Without these structures, the practices would be very hard to practice and convenience will not drive change. The first structure we need is a clear single URL that describes how we work. This is the root of culture as code. So the test for this is if you have a new hire or you have a new external collaborator and they want to figure out how to behave, you can send them one URL and they know how they're supposed to act in various situations and why. Right? They also know if they don't like that, it's clear what they don't like and they can be equally clear on what they want and what's hurting, and then we can start making changes. The second important structure is also one URL, but this is one URL for the data, right? When you want to see how well something is working or has worked in the past, there's a single place that you go. Right? The test for this is that anyone in the company, maybe even outside the company, but certainly anyone in the company who wants to help, who wants to report a pain, who wants to see how healthy things are, how effective things are going right now, see the result of past experiments or run a new experiment, they go to the one URL, they see all the data, all the things that have been tried, all the pains that we've experienced and how we looked at them, and they can explore that data themselves. Right? Even for novel ideas, for novel uses of the data, they go to the one URL, and from there, they can get all the information that they need. Right? The third structure that we need is one clear change cycle. No matter what change we're making, no matter who's making it, no matter who's proposing it, how obvious or inobvious, there's one cycle, and we just go through that over and over and over. And the test for that is that no one expends mental effort, no one expends executive function on driving a process or remembering how to do something, remembering where to put a pain, or suggest an experiment or adjust a behavior or anything like that. They always just go to the one process and we do that one thing. If you have a pain, you put it in the standard place. We will look at it at the standard time. Right? That reduces all the mental overhead and makes it so the process drives itself. It does not need a driver. So these 3 structures together make those 4 behaviors nice and easy. The 4 practices can become automatic once these structures are in place. Once those practices are in place, The result is that the principle becomes actually lived. Everyone has equal power to make a change. Everyone has equal access to the data, and they can get information about what's been tried and what the results were. They can make their suggestions. And then everyone has equal access to stay their pain or to suggest a possible experiment. And then we make a choice based off of the results of those experiments, and we have one clear way to work. Thank you. We're working on this with our team. I hope you would try it with yours. I encourage you to explore culture as a process and see how well it works for you.